The wind across the northern lands had changed. For generations, the frozen valleys and fjords had been harsh but familiar. The storms came and went, the mountains stood silent, and the Viking clans survived the brutal winters together. But now, the wind carried something else: fear. After the battle at the ancient Godgate, word spread quickly across the north. Messengers traveled from village to village, warning the clans of what had been seen in the Broken Spine Mountains, an army from another world, ancient creatures crossing into their lands, and a gate that refused to close. Many villagers began preparing for war, others chose to flee south. But the north had never faced an enemy like this, because the enemy did not fear death. The first village fell 3 nights later. The settlement of Skarnvik stood near the edge of the northern forests, a place where hunters often gathered before traveling deeper into the mountains. When the Shadow Army arrived, the villagers believed it was just a storm moving through the trees. But storms do not march in silence. Hundreds of dark figures emerged from the forest. The battle lasted less than an hour. By morning, the village was gone. Only smoke and frozen ruins remained. Soon more settlements began falling. The Shadow Warriors moved through the north like a living darkness. They did not rest. They did not retreat. Every village they passed became another silent ruin buried beneath the snow. Across the frozen lands, the Viking clans began gathering their warriors. If the north was going to fall, they would make the enemy bleed for it. Bjorn Ironwolf stood beside the cliffs above Frostheim, watching the distant horizon. Smoke rose in the distance. Another village had fallen. Behind him, hundreds of Viking warriors prepared their weapons. Axes were sharpened, shields raised, runic blades glowed faintly in the cold air. The north was preparing for its greatest battle. Bjorn turned to the warriors gathered behind him. "If the gate stays open," he said, "this war will never end." The warriors nodded. They understood. The Shadow Army was only the beginning. Something far worse commanded them from beyond the gate, and that thing was coming. The sky above the mountains darkened. Storm clouds gathered quickly across the horizon. Then, the ground began to tremble. The enemy had arrived. From the distant forest, the Shadow Army appeared once again. Hundreds of dark soldiers marched across the frozen valley. But this time, they were not alone. Behind them walked something larger. Massive armored creatures, giants formed from black stone and ancient metal, marched with the army. Each step shook the earth. The warriors of the north raised their shields. The battle began. The clash between the Vikings and the Shadow Army exploded across the valley. Axes struck ancient armor. Runic weapons shattered shadow soldiers into fragments of dark energy. But the enemy did not stop coming. For every soldier destroyed, another emerged from the storm. Bjorn fought at the center of the battlefield, his axe glowing with ancient runes as it cut through the enemy ranks. But even he could see the truth. They were losing. The Shadow Army was endless. Then, the storm above the mountains changed. The clouds twisted into a massive spiral above the distant Broken Spine Mountains. Blue lightning flashed across the sky. Something enormous was moving behind the storm. The Shadow Army suddenly stopped. Every soldier turned toward the mountains. Even the giants froze in place. Bjorn followed their gaze, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The sky above the gate had opened, not the stone gate, something else, a massive tear in the sky itself. From within the darkness behind the storm, a colossal shadow began descending toward the world. The creature was larger than any titan, larger than mountains. Its shape was still hidden within the storm, but its presence alone shook the entire north. The commander of the Shadow Army raised its sword toward the sky. The army roared. They were not here to conquer the north. They were here to prepare the world for something far worse. Bjorn tightened his grip on his axe. Because now he understood the truth. The war for the north had only been the beginning. The real enemy had finally arrived. And if the creature inside the storm reached the ground, the frozen north would not be the only land to fall. If you enjoyed this Viking dark fantasy story, like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter of Frozen Saga. New monsters, ancient legends, and forgotten gods are awakening across the frozen north. This saga is far from over.